Moses. Joseph brought his family and his brothers and his immediate surroundings into Egypt. And Moses was the one who brought them out of Egypt. Out of Egypt. Moses also had different evil in his life. He had gone through so much in his life that he had to look beyond the natural, to look at the plans of God in his life. And that is how he could overcome what was currently looked at evil and turn it around for good. How God turned around for good. So Moses was born in a very, very difficult time. He was born in a time where the Pharaoh had forgotten about Joseph. The Pharaoh is the king of Egypt. He had forgotten about Joseph. He had forgotten about all the good things that Jewish people had done for Egypt. And he was at a point when Pharaoh looked at the Jewish people and said, "Oh, there are too many in number here. They're going to revolt and we're going to have a problem. We're going to have a problem." So he first said, very secretly tried to kill the male babies. And then when that did not happen, he gave an order, an explicit order, and saying that all the Jewish people who have male babies, throw them into the Nile. Throw them into the Nile. But we hear a male infanticide here. People were ordered to throw their male babies into the river Nile. Into the river Nile. So it was a difficult situation that Moses' mom was. Didn't know what to do. He was growing up and there were going to be cries, and when the baby grows up, the neighbors could hear. They don't have insulated walls to guard them. And she panicked and she thought about a plan. She said, "Let me make a basket, put tar inside, make it comfortable, put the baby inside, and put it in the Nile River." That would have been a horrible situation for the mom to see her baby, not knowing what is going to happen to my little baby boy. She asked her daughter to keep a watch as to what was going on. The evil that Moses faced initially was he, at the birth, was intended to die. That was the evil that he had faced. All the male babies, he was born at a time when all the male babies had to die. And that was the evil that he had in his life, that came into his life, that even though he did not have control, there was an evil that happened in the circumstances surrounding him. And so Moses' mom had to put her baby into the Nile and look. And what happened? God turned it around. And he sent Pharaoh's daughter in there. He turned the evil that Moses was in to be a victory, a good that God could bring about in that very same evil that happened, right? It was an evil to throw your baby into the Nile. And yet God used the very thing that they were supposed to do and took Moses to the palace. Moses became Pharaoh's son. Pharaoh's daughter's son. So that means Pharaoh was his grandfather, right? Pharaoh's daughter adopted him, and so Pharaoh became his grandpa. So Moses grew up in the palace in Egypt. Moses grew up, and there was a reason for God to turn that circumstances and take him to the palace, because that was the best education that he could ever get. God trained him for the 40 years that he was going to walk in the wilderness along with the children of Israel. You know, Moses was the one who penned the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch. Moses grew up in the palace. How do I know? Acts chapter 7, verse 22. Stephen, while he was being brought to justice, he recollects the story of Joseph and Moses. And Acts 7:22, Stephen says, "And Moses was learned in all the wisdoms of Egyptians, and was mighty in words and deeds." Moses, even though the circumstances was evil, God took him to the palace so he could prepare him. In the natural, if you see, why did God allow this Pharaoh to forget what Joseph did? How much did Joseph do for this country? This country is standing because of what Joseph did. The plans that he put together for the 7 years of plenty, and the plans that he put together to distribute the 7 years of plenty and to the 7 years of famine. He was the one who was responsible for Egypt even standing at that day. But people forget. Circumstances happen. And oftentimes when circumstances happen in our life, we look in the natural and we'll think in the natural. We say in the natural, say, how much did I do for this person? How much I worked for this company? How much I did for all the people for my family? They don't even have a gratitude. We often forget the good that God has planned behind what evil is going on in our lives. Oftentimes we look only in the natural, only in what is going on, only focused on the evil that is going on. There was evil. There was definitely evil. Who can even dream or think of throwing innocent little babies into the Nile? Because he had a fear and paranoia that one day these young men will grow up and rebel against Egypt. That was the reason that he said. But God could turn every one of your circumstances. Circumstances can be evil. Circumstances can be evil. But God can turn your circumstances for your good and for his good. Joseph said it very well. He said, God turned it around for good so that many can live. Many can live. God has a plan in your life. God has a plan in my life. I am here to impact many people around me. You are here to impact many people around you. God has placed you in a family. God has placed you in a neighborhood. God has placed you with some relationships. God has given you jobs in certain companies so that you will be the impact maker in that place that God has given you contact with. You can look in the natural and you can say, this evil is going on around me. You can look at the natural and say, all the things that are going on in the political world. You can look in the natural and say, my boss has no gratitude. But you can look in the supernatural and say, God has a special plan for me. He is educating me. Moses learned so many things in the palace. Stephen clearly states, and Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in the words and deeds. God was preparing him for the nation of Israel. They wouldn't have had the Torah or the Pentateuch today if Moses had not studied in the palace. If Moses had not gone through the education of the Egyptians, and Moses had not gone through all the things that the Egyptian royalty was trained in, he would not have been able to lead the children of Israel for 40 years in the wilderness. But God knows the end from the beginning. And he was looking after Moses and saying, this is the man I'm going to use. And Moses was destined to give life to so many people in Israel. So many people he's going to train, he's going to raise up, because Moses, even though the circumstances were evil, God turned it around for good. God turned it around for good. The second aspect was the confidence. What happened was after 40 years, Moses suddenly realized he is not an Egyptian, and he had to see that he is a Hebrew. And he wanted to go and look at the people that, or his own people, I don't know whether his mom was alive at that time, but he wanted to go and see his Hebrew people. What he saw was all wickedness around him. All wickedness around him. His people were being mistreated, beaten. And what he did was, he had the self-confidence. I am a great man now. I can do whatever. I got trained in the Egyptian royalty. I can fight. I can kill. And you know what? He secretly killed an Egyptian because he was mistreating a Jewish man. He killed him. He buried him. He thought, nobody knows. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. He had this confidence in him that he was trying to convince the Hebrew people and the nation that I am your Redeemer. I am the one God chose to take you out of Egypt. So follow me, follow me. Again, I'm going back to Acts chapter 26. Stephen saying, for he supposed that his brethren would have understood that God would deliver them by his hand But they did not understand. The Jewish people did not understand that God was going to deliver through Moses. And in Exodus, it is written, one of the guy asked him, "Who made you ruler over us? Who are you to tell me what to do and what not to do?" The next day he came and he tried to convince the other two Jewish guys fighting with each other and saying, "Hey, we are brethren, don't fight with each other. Let's resolve the dispute." That's when he said, "You know what? You think you're a ruler? Who made you ruler? That I need to listen to you. You think you can kill me like you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" Until that time, Moses was thinking, and nobody knew what he did and how he killed and how he buried secretly. He probably took him aside and behind a house or behind a lane somewhere and killed him there and buried some there. But somehow it came out, and Moses found out that his evil was revealed. His self-trust and self-confidence and his thought process that everything will fall in place because he has gone to a level. A lot of times we think that way. We have achieved something. I come with so much of education. I come with so much of skill set. I come with so much of history behind. I have read the Bible so many times. I have worked here. I have preached here. I have sung here. I have done so many things. I'm qualified. Our own qualification becomes evil a lot of times. A lot of times our own qualification becomes evil. And what Moses did, he ran away. He ran away to the wilderness. He was so disillusioned that he ran to the wilderness, to the Midianite country. And not only to the Midianite country, he married a Midianite priest's daughter. The Midianite priest's daughter he married. So he was like rebelling from God. He said, "I don't have anything to do with this God. I want to get away from this God. I will marry a Midianite priest's daughter and I will live my life happily ever after. I'm done with this God." Maybe he made a mistake in giving me a calling. Made a mistake in calling me to deliver this people. Maybe he made a mistake in sending me to the royalty in Egypt and training me in all the things that the Egyptians were trained. He went back to being a shepherd. He was tending sheep when God arrived in the wilderness. We all know about the encounter that Moses had at the burning bush. And there was a bush that was burning, but it was not getting consumed. And Moses went to that bush and said, "What's going on?" And then God called out to him and said, "Take off your shoes. This is God calling you, Moses." And he asked him something. "What is your name, God? What is your name?" God never knew. God always referred to himself by the name of, "I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." But this is the first time he came back and said, "I am who I am." And Moses, you might be changing your stuff. God doesn't have an yesterday. God doesn't have a tomorrow. God has everything in present. And he said, "I am who I am. I am. I am." You go and tell your people that I am sent you. I had a plan yesterday when you were born. I have a plan all the way when you were in the palace. I had a plan when you killed that Egyptian. I had a plan when you ran away. I had a plan when you married that Midianite priest's daughter. I had a plan all the way. I never changed, Moses. I never changed, Moses. I want you to look at the plan that I have for you. I said, I am. You might change, Moses. You might want to run away from what I have given you. You might think that all things are evil. And you might have that self-trust in you. But no, unless you put your trust in me. You know, God showed two signs to Moses. One, he said, throw your stick down, the staff down. And what happened? The staff became a serpent. Why did God show him a serpent? He said, Moses, all this while, what you are having, what the confidence that you are having in yourself was just a serpent. You were having an evil thoughts, you were having evil ideas, you were having evil intentions, you were having to implement God's plan through your own evil ideas. That was what you are doing, Moses. And he showed him, throw your staff down and I will show you what you are. And Moses was afraid of the serpent and he ran from it. And then God said, pick that thing by the tail. And he picked it up and it became a staff. And you know, from that time, that staff was not called Moses' staff. That staff was called the staff of God. The staff of God. God turned his serpent-like staff into dependence on him. Into dependence on him. The next thing that God asked him to do is put your hand into your bosom and pull it out. It was leprosy. His hand came out leprous. Leprous is uncleanness. God said to Moses, you know, your very thoughts are unclean, Moses. I had a plan in your life to build you up, to make you a leader. I trained you. And what you do? Go and kill somebody. Go and try to use your own ability to negotiate. And then Moses, that was one when he said, I'm a man of stammering lips. I can't speak anymore. I can't even speak. But this is the same Moses who was trying to negotiate between two people, who was going to exert authority and kill another person. And this is the same Moses that Stephen said, and Moses was learned in all wisdom and was mighty in words. He had no stammering lips. After times, people misunderstood and saying he had stammering lips. Record shows that he was mighty in words and deeds. That he was using his own ability. But when he came to God, that's when he started stammering and saying, God, I have evil in me. Turn it around for good. The evil that Moses had, the evil confidence that Moses had, he had to turn for good and put his trust in the Lord. Exodus 4:10, then Moses said to the Lord, O my Lord, I'm not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I'm slow of speech and slow of tongue. We need to acknowledge who we are before God. A lot of times we come with our own strength and say, God, I've done so much for you. You know what? You owe me, God. God doesn't owe us anything. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he shall direct your path. There is a formula in the scriptures, Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. Trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. It's so easy to lean on our own understanding. It's so easy to put confidence in our own self. So easy to trust in our own ability than to trust in God. Because it is difficult to trust in God. The reason the circumstances don't show what he will do and he doesn't do. Always it is the putting confidence in our ability. We look back and say, oh, I did this and that. Maybe I can do this also. But even something has not happened in the past, God is able to do that. And all he's asking you and I to do is to put our confidence in him. Let's put aside the evil of self-trust and put the good of trusting in the Lord. Let's put our complete trust in the Lord and see how it turns our lives. See how it turns our very being. See how he can do the impossible possible. Impossible possible. So Moses returned to the Lord and he said, Lord, send somebody else. But God said, no, I'm sending you, my friend. You have to go. Moses had no other excuse but to go. And then he argued, how do I get these people out of Pharaoh? They don't even listen to me. And how will Pharaoh listen to me? How is he going? How am I going to convince him? And all that. And the Pharaoh was trying to kill me before. That Pharaoh died. The next Pharaoh came into being. And so Moses, if we can relate back, Moses grew up in Pharaoh's daughter's house. So that Pharaoh who was his grandpa was the one who was trying to kill him now. And now, who became Pharaoh is probably Moses' uncle. So now he's going to his uncle and he's saying, let my people go. And Pharaoh says, who are you, man? that the people I should leave these people go? And Moses did so many things before him. There were 10 plagues listed in the scriptures that Moses performed these miracles and signs and wonders. And every time Pharaoh said, who are you? Who are you? I'm not going to listen. And Exodus 5:22, so Moses returned to the Lord and said, Lord, why have you brought trouble on this people? Why is it that you have sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people. Neither have you delivered your people. He's accusing God. He's saying, hey, you created this problem, God. They were comfortably serving Pharaoh. They were all making bricks and all that, and they were happy to serve him. Now you just poke the hornet's nest, and now Pharaoh is angry with me, angry with the people, and he's putting extra burden on them, and you increase the evil. You increase the evil. And he's looking at God and saying, you have increased the evil. A lot of times we focus on the delay in our lives. When God has promised us something and it doesn't happen immediately, we go to God and say, where is it, God? Are you even able to do it? Or are you just creating some scenarios for me to just hold on to some crumbs under the table? And Moses was doing that, saying, what is going on, God? I want this evil to go away. Are you even listening to God? Are you even doing anything? My people are suffering even more. I was happy in the wilderness having my own family. I've left my family, I came here, and now everyone is against me. The people are against me. The Pharaoh is against me. And nothing is happening. What do I do? You know what? Sometimes when the delays in our lives happen, when things don't go the way we want it to go, when promises of God doesn't come through in our life, we just get upset and focus on the delay, We blame everyone that is around us. We blame God. We focus on the delay. That is the evil. A lot of times we miss out on God's blessing because we are only focused on the natural, on the immediate, and the delay gets prolonged and prolonged. Prolonged and prolonged. You know, at the age of 40, Moses came and tried to redeem the people. He ran away to the wilderness at the age of 40. You know when God approached him? At the age of 80. You know, Moses is very dear to our family because my dad used to be a Moses fan. When he came to the Lord at the age of 40, and he said, I am Moses the new man. I have the revelation. I want to serve the Lord. And so he made I'm sure my sister remembers that. He made a little badge for us. Everyone in the family had a badge. Moses the new man. We used to wear that badge. My dad used to make us wear that badge. Moses the new man. Moses was always looked at us at 40 years. He had a sudden awakening of the calling of God in his life. Sudden awakening. He tried everything to do by himself. He could not. It took 40 years for Moses to realize that he was not the one able to do it by his own ability. And when the right time came, God approached him. Said, Moses, you might have changed. You might have aged. You might have run away. Don't focus on the delay, Moses. I'm here. What I said before, I will do it. However I called you, I'm still able to do it. Still able to do it. Are there promises in your life that you think it's been delayed? What is God doing in my life? Where has He been? To give me some promises. Some people prophesied over me, or some people prayed over me and told me something. Nothing is happening. In fact, the things have started going worse than before. You know, God is speaking to you today and saying, I am going to lift you up. I am giving you an opening. Exodus 7:1. So the Lord said to Moses, see, I have made you as a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron, your brother, shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and Aaron, your brother, shall tell Pharaoh to send the children of Israel out of the land. God elevated Moses, even though there was a delay. If it had immediately come, the people would have come back to Egypt, and they would have been in Egypt. They would have wanted to be in Egypt. Even after all this trouble, when they didn't get garlics and onions, they wanted to come back to Egypt in the wilderness. So if God had given them a release of the very first time in Pharaoh, then they would have gone to the Red Sea, and the Red Sea is right there, it's not parting, and let's go back to Egypt, and we have comfortable homes there. Sometimes God trains you and I in the delay. In the delay that Moses went, Moses looked at it as an evil. Moses looked at it, the children of Israel looked at it as an evil that was going on. But God was looking at it as a good and saying, I'm honoring you, Moses. I am lifting you up. I am making you like a god to Pharaoh and the children of Israel. They're going to look up to you. That is why when Moses led the children of Israel, people followed. There was 600,000 or 6,000 people who walked out of Egypt. And all these people followed a single man. How? Because they saw the miracles of God through this man that was performed. And they knew that this man has a special connection with God. Today, what is your evil? What are the evils going on? Is your circumstances evil? Are there things going on in your life that you are thinking are evil? That you want it turned around? Sometimes it is the job. Sometimes it is the family situations. Sometimes it is children. Sometimes it is relationships. Maybe there's evil in the circumstances. But God can use the very same circumstances for His good. He could take Moses from the river Nile to the palace. He could take Joseph from the prison to the palace. He can take you and I from the worst of the situations to the best of the places that could be. Are you depending on your self-confidence and saying, God, I can only do this, this, and that? And use me only in this? No, go beyond. Put your confidence in Him. Put your strength in Him. If God is calling you to be a preacher, God is calling you to teach about Him, God is calling you to go out and speak the gospel, go not in your own strength, but in the strength of what God has placed in your life. And you know what? Moses had to be broken down before he could accept. Sometimes we go in our own strength and we have to be broken down. And God does a good job of breaking people down. I've been broken down many times in my life. I've tried so many things with my own strength. And times when He said, stop, that's not your role. That's not your role. This is the area. And I shared this before, and never wanted to stand in front of a crowd and speak. But God said, that's what you're doing. He can turn your self-trust into trust in Him. Today, we've started Jeevan Church a year and a half, or a little more than that, December 25th of 2021. I was really scared when we started that. I didn't have the confidence. I told several of our pastors, give me another church, I will go and pastor in a church, established church. But this is what God called me to do. And today, I'm amazed at what God is doing. I get overwhelmed sometimes in the morning and the evening and stand at His presence and say, God, You're much more than what I can even imagine or think of. You're so great, Lord, that You can do much more than I can even think of. We have a Jeevan Church YouTube page. Just now, it hit 2K subscribers. I don't know who those people are. It hit 2,000 subscribers. Who is subscribing? I don't know. God is just bringing people. God brought all of you here. You have a plan. He has a plan and a purpose. Don't have self-confidence, self-trust. Give it to Him. He can do much more than what you can do. Moses knew that, and that is how he could lead a very rebellious people for 40 years into the wilderness and saying, I'm not trusting in my ability, I'm trusting in the God who has called me. He had to be broken down so that he could completely trust in the God who called him. And when the people murmured against Moses, the scripture says Moses was the most humble man in the earth. How did that happen? Because he was a guy who was self-confident and was able to kill a person because of his self-confidence. And yet God broke him down such that he had complete trust in God. In spite of the impossible things God was telling him, go and strike a rock and it will give you water. And Moses did that. I would have turned around God and said, God, if water doesn't come, the people will think I'm a fool. Are you sure water is going to come? No, don't make me a fool before the people, please. But Moses said, God said, strike the rock, I'll send water. He struck the rock. God said, I'll turn the water, bitter water, into sweet. And he made it. God said, I'll part the Red Sea. And he parted the Red Sea. You know what? The place that we need to be from the evil to the good is the place of total surrender in his place. Let's learn from that from Moses. And then on the delay, let's not focus on the delay, the natural, what is happening today. If God has given you a plan and a purpose and a vision and a calling in your life, it is going to come to fruition. If God has given you a plan and a purpose and a calling for your children's life, it is going to come. Don't consider the delay as God's denial. God is going to open that door and you are going to see miracles that he is going to perform. And Moses, because he relied on God, he said, I can take the delay. I can take the delay. He was supposed to go into the promised land in 7 days or something like that. It took 40 years for him to lead the children of Israel. He said, nope. God has said, not now. We're going later. We're going around circles. Because God, I'm not going to circumvent God. I'm not going to double cross God. I'm not going to go against God. I will follow what God. So the children of Israel were birthed in the womb of Egypt. And they were led through the wilderness. And they became a strong nation. And that is why even today, the children of Israel is such a strong nation that their bond is so much together because they walked in the wilderness. And you know what? They're supposed to recollect the stories of how God came and brought them out of Egypt and how they walked through the wilderness. They relate their stories to their next generation, to their next generation, to their next generation. So they know that this God did not delay them. This God gave them the promise at the perfect time. Let's look to the Lord today.